As time passed, Ilene found herself at a crossroads. Richard was still trying, still begging for another chance, but her heart had shifted. What had once been clear, the desire to save her marriage, was now clouded by the reality that she deserved more. More than just being someone's second option. More than living in the shadow of someone else's desires. Teddy's message had awakened something in her. The possibility of happiness, of a future untainted by betrayal and mistrust, felt within reach. She had been afraid to grasp it, but now, as she stood on the precipice of a new chapter in her life, she knew she was ready. Ilene sat in her car, staring at her phone, her thumb hovering over the message thread with Teddy. It had been weeks since his text, the one that had made her smile despite the weight of her crumbling marriage. She had resisted the urge to respond, too afraid of what might come next, but tonight, something felt different. She was tired of being trapped in the cycle of trying to salvage something broken beyond repair. She inhaled deeply, then finally typed out the message. "Hey, Teddy, would you like to grab a coffee sometime?" She stared at the words for a moment, her pulse racing. Then, with a single tap, she hit send. Seconds stretched into minutes as she waited for a reply. Each moment felt like an eternity. She tried not to think about what would happen if he said no, or worse, if he didn't respond at all. A soft chime pulled her from her thoughts. A message had come through. Her heart skipped as she opened it. "Hey, Ilene, I'd love to, but I've just started seeing someone. Timing, I guess." Her heart sank and the world felt cold again. Teddy's words were kind, but they stung in ways she hadn't expected. The door she thought might reopen had been quietly shut, and she found herself more alone than ever. She stared at the message, biting her lip to keep her emotions in check. "Of course," she replied quickly, masking her disappointment with politeness. "Thanks for letting me know. I hope it works out." 2 weeks later, Ilene packed her belongings and moved out of the house she had shared with Richard for 15 years. It had been a slow process, both physically and emotionally, but she knew she had to leave. The memories in that house were too painful, too tainted by his betrayal. Every corner, every piece of furniture, every photo hanging on the wall felt like a reminder of what had been lost. As the movers carried the last box to the truck, Ilene stood in the empty living room, taking one final look around. The silence was oppressive, and she felt an overwhelming sense of finality. The divorce was finalized a week later. Richard didn't fight her on any of it. He had pleaded, begged for a second chance, but Ilene had remained resolute. She was done. She had given him too many chances already. What she didn't expect was for him to turn to her family and friends. Within days of the divorce papers being signed, her phone started buzzing incessantly. First it was her sister, then her best friend, then her mother. All of them had the same concerned tone, the same message. "Ilene, we're worried about you. Richard said you're not doing well. Richard came by. He's concerned about your mental health. Are you okay?" Ilene had never felt more betrayed. It was bad enough that Richard had gone behind her back to discuss her private pain with the people closest to her. But the fact that they all believed him made it worse. They showed up at her door, uninvited, offering unwanted advice, telling her how she needed to focus on healing and how they just wanted to help. But no one could help, not in the way she needed. All she wanted was to be left alone to wallow in her misery, to grieve for the life she thought she'd have, the love she thought would last forever. 2 months passed in a blur of sadness and solitude. Ilene's world had become smaller and quieter. She went to work, came home, and avoided social gatherings. Her friends and family eventually stopped calling, realizing she needed space. The loneliness was suffocating, but at least it was hers. It was a regular Tuesday afternoon when something shifted. Ilene was sitting at her desk, her focus on a spreadsheet that required more attention than she could muster. A soft knock at her office door startled her, and she glanced up, expecting one of her coworkers. But it wasn't. There, standing in the doorway, was Teddy. Her heart leapt in her chest at the sight of him. He looked the same as always, slightly awkward, shy, but with a gentle warmth in his eyes. "Teddy," she managed to say, trying to steady her voice. He offered a small smile, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Hey, Ilene, I have a work order for your system," he explained hesitantly, glancing down at the tablet in his hands. Ilene blinked, taken aback. "For my system?" He nodded, stepping inside the office. Yeah, my boss sent me over. The air between them felt charged, heavy with unspoken words. She couldn't tell if the work order was real or just an excuse to see her, but she didn't care. All she knew was that seeing Teddy again, after all this time, felt like a lifeline being thrown into the sea of her despair. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Teddy cleared his throat, shifting on his feet. I know it's been a while, he started, his voice soft. And I know we didn't really get a chance to, talk, but I've been thinking about you. Eileen's heart fluttered at his words. I've been thinking about you too, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Teddy looked down at the tablet again, as if it could shield him from the vulnerability of the moment. I don't know where things stand for you now. I'm not with that person anymore. It didn't really work out. Eileen's chest tightened. The flood of emotions was too much to contain. She had been drowning in loneliness, and now, here was Teddy, offering her a chance at something she thought she'd lost forever. I'm glad you're here, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I've missed you. Teddy's eyes met hers, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Eileen saw hope reflected back at her. He set down the tablet, taking a tentative step closer. I've missed you too.